Scott Shigeoka. I'm originally from Hawaii. I'm a community designer, but my first job was as a mango picker in my backyard with my grandparents. And I'm going to talk a little bit about fires and Icelandic snowflakes. Not too much on like metrics and technology. Really just get you guys amped and share a story about fires. And it starts all the way back a couple years ago when I took this photo in Jordan. And I met these wonderful Bedouin guys who were just so intrigued that I knew Arabic. I know just a little bit, like greetings. And they said, "You must come to our cave with us." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, let's go." And so we rode off for hours in the sunset into the desert. I just had complete faith and trust in these guys. And we were at this cave, and we started this big fire, and we cooked a meal together. And they asked me, like, what do you do for a job? And at the time, I was a music journalist, and I said, "Oh, I write about music. I get to interview all these great people." And they said, do you play music? Do you play instruments?" And I said, "No, but I freestyle rap. I can do some rap." And they're like, "Oh, please perform. Do some freestyle for us." So I was like, "Okay." And I get up, from my cross-legged seat, and I just start rolling a freestyle jam for them. I'm just going. I'm taking the energy from nature, creativity from nature, and I'm freestyling. And then to my surprise, one of them stands up and starts freestyling in Arabic. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So we're going back and forth in English and Arabic, back and forth, and it's this beautiful, beautiful connection. It's just music bringing people together around this fire. I mean, how many people have been around a fire and shared stories or music in this crowd? Like a lot of people. It's a core fundamental part of an experience that we all share. And so that began my journey into fires. I was like, I am obsessed. Like, I wasn't a believer back at camp, but now, I think fires can do everything. And I asked myself, why? Why am I so obsessed with fires? I mean, I was so obsessed I wanted to bring a fire here, but there was building code violations. And I asked myself, why fires? And I think it had something to do with rituals, with this idea of building rituals that bring people together, that connect to the core fundamental parts of being a human. Like, what do we want? We want to play, we want to have fun. We don't want to often sit in these chairs, although we will do it. We want to be out there and running around in nature, usually, and connecting with our loved ones and sharing song and music. And so I went deeper, and I found out that fires in Iceland were a core part of building that culture of community in Iceland. I'd never been to Iceland, but I went down the rabbit hole because as a journalist, I knew a lot of musicians from Iceland. Björk, Sigur Rós, of course, I'm sure a lot of you know. But I started to learn more about the old traditional ways of telling stories, the sagas of Icelanders, these 9th and 10th century stories that existed around winter fires, where people would gather to stay warm, but also to share music and to share stories. I got so obsessed, I tattooed a fire on my right wrist. I mean, that's how dedicated I am to this. Still continuing to learn about fires. And then, as I did more and more research and started Skyping and tweeting at people in Iceland, I told myself, I need to go. I need to move to Iceland. And everyone thought it was crazy. It's like, dude, you're this boy from Hawaii. What are you going to do in Iceland? You've never been there before. And that was a really important, question. What am I going to do there? And as a journalist, I was really lucky to have the experience to be an asker of questions, to really be deliberate and intentional in the way that I lived. And so I thought about what was a question that I could explore when I'm in Iceland. This country of 320,000 people, it's very tiny. Capital city Reykjavik, the second largest city in Iceland is Akureyri in the north, 13,000 people. It's very, very tiny. Volcanic, energetic. John Lennon drew the Snæfellsnes Nest Peninsula, which is on that left side there, as one of the energy centers of the Earth. But people still thought it was crazy, even though there was all of that going on for Iceland. They said, "Dude, you have a dream job. You are interviewing musicians, writing stories about Empire of the Sun, Fanagram. Like, why would you give that up? Like, people would kill for that." And I said, it's because there was something in my gut, intuitively, that was telling me to go, and I really needed to listen to it. And they said, "But Scott, you're broke. You have no money. How are you going to make this happen?" And I said, "That's a really great point. I don't know yet." So I started to think again back to that question that would help guide me through my time in Iceland. And I realized that there was this huge connection, just like across the world, between the relationship of music and social movements and revolutions. So I thought, what if we asked, how does music impact the modern day environmental movement? Björk and Sigur Rós, for instance, did an amazing show with a bunch of other artists like Ásgeir to protest an hydroelectric dam that was being built in Iceland, which was going to flood the highland region of this country. And it was important, not because, I mean, it is clean energy, but it is very destructive at the same time to ecosystems. And also, all of that energy was being used to funnel straight towards aluminum smelters that were multinational companies not giving back to the country and were really destructive to the environment. And so they organized this huge festival, a fifth of the country came, and they managed to stop the building of this dam. Like, wow, the power of music, the power of community. Yeah, you can applaud that, that's great. So MTV, which still does music, surprisingly, used to have this partnership with Fulbright where you could do a research project for a year and explore the power of music as a force for social change. So I applied for that, I got that, and I went on to Iceland. Good, I'm still broke. You know, they didn't owe a lot of money, but you know, it at least gave me a reason and a visa to be there and also direction. Before I left, I learned about this amazing process called human-centered design. I don't know if anyone knows about it. Okay, a lot of cool, great, okay, awesome. I was an artist, a journalist at the time. I was like, why do I need to learn about human-centered design? What does this have to do with my goal of going to Iceland? And they said, because at the core of every experience in our personal life, in our professional life, in our work as community builders, we need to always understand what the dreams and needs of people are. And we can do that through observations, we can do that through conversations, but we need to really start there. We need to start from that fundamental truth. And meanwhile, I said, well, the desire that I have in my mind, and my heart, and my gut is to launch a festival. Because what not a better place to facilitate play, to facilitate connection, to have fires that are legit and legal. So when I arrived to Iceland, I didn't know anyone. I had an Icelandic phrase book, and I thought back to that conversation about human-centered design, and I just went out and I started talking to people on the street. I was like, hi, I'm Scott, I'm from Hawaii, first job, mango picker. Can I talk to you about music? And like, was at the bar and saying like, hey, what's up? Oh, Bjarki, nice to meet you. Can we talk about music and political activism? And I realized that I was taking a lot. Like here I am, a guest in a country, and I'm taking so much from people, and I'm not giving. And so I thought, okay, how can I give to people so that I can honor them for all of this great information that they're giving me? And so I said, well, people like to have fun, right? Like people like to sing, people like freestyle rap, apparently. And so I started organizing just little small events. You know, sometimes there was just 10 people that came, and it was really just a space where people could be invited, could come, show up, and just share. And I would put on my design research hat, and I would observe people. I would listen to them. I would hear about what they're really interested in, what they're focusing on, what their purpose is. And then I also started to prototype some smaller events. You know, I wanted to do this big music festival. I had this big research plan. How could I break it up into smaller pieces where I could actually bring people together and learn from that experience? So a group of us, who I just met in that, you know, talking to people on the streets, we organized these backyard concerts. Just really, you know, sometimes I had 60 people, 100 people, and we just asked people to join us, you know, be a part of creating music, be a part of creating art, and we just want to hear from you about what you're really excited about. The first month of being in Iceland was just a listening tour, to listen. You know, I was just going to listen and learn as much as I could, create fires as often as I could. And then we heard from people at those events, like, backyards are great, but we also have this huge backyard outside of Reykjavik that is super magical. We should go out into nature and we should have these experiences because that's where we get inspiration, that's where creativity comes from, that's where awe comes from. So let's go into nature. And so another question came into my mind, right? I'm always asking questions like, how can we do this in a really sustainable way? How can we be really environmentally savvy so that we're not bringing our footprint into nature? And so we found this organization, Landvern, which is like the Sierra Club of Iceland, and we asked them, okay, you know, we heard that you really love for people to be environmentally savvy. You've never worked at a music festival before or with musicians and artists really, but would you be open to that? We want to start doing shows and we eventually want to run a festival out in nature. We want to make sure we're doing it right. And they said yes. They said, yes, we'll definitely partner with you on the festival. We'll partner with you on the way towards that festival. Meanwhile, there was all of these people from these events that were coming up to us saying, we want to be a part of this. We want to help you dream up this festival. And I continued to ask questions like, why? What is incentivizing you? Why are you so excited about this? And they said, because people don't often create spaces where people can just listen to what I have to say. Like, that was it. It was like that was the core insight that came from why people wanted to join on. I mean, this family of farmers, brilliant people and generous, they gave us a farm. They said, take our farm between the mountains and the ocean for free and do this festival because we so believe in what you're trying to create. People resonated with the value and the authenticity of what we were trying to share with the world, and they said, we want to support you. It goes back to the ode wisdom of the elders, right? When you really follow your path and do it in an open-hearted way, the universe will embrace you and provide. And then the festival happened. It happened in the summer. The first one happened in the summer of 2014. And leading up to it, we held these dream spaces where people in the local area around the farm in Icelandic could share with us what they dreamed about. What did they want at this festival? What was exciting to you? Why do you want to participate in this? What are some of the actions that you want to see come out of this festival? And then we incorporated all of that into the actual design of the festival. This is all just using the process of human-centered design. And we had workshops, from skateboard designing to permaculture. We had musicians from 15 countries. We had artists doing big puppetry workshops, where you had 3 people controlling puppets. We had children join us, elders. It was really beautiful and incredible. And I had one man who came up to me after the festival, and he said, thank you. And he was crying, and he said, thank you so much for creating this space. And I said, oh my gosh, thank you for being here, and can I ask you, why? It seems like, you're really emotional. This really hits you. Could I ask why? And he said, well, I have problems with social connections just in my daily life, and I felt like everyone here really heard me and really accepted me and really loved me. And I was like, yeah, that's the power. That's the real power of community, We also heard that we can't just do a festival to sustain change. We need to build more experiences around it. So we did an artist residency where we brought 12 artists from 6 countries to really work with the local community and launch art projects. And in the lead up to that residency, we interviewed every single artist for an hour, and we said, what do you want from this residency? Why are you here? And here's a draft of our itinerary, what's missing, what resonates with you? And we worked with them to actually create and design this experience. And then we heard, we can't just focus on art and music. We need to go beyond that. And so we found journalists and healers and business and entrepreneurs and creators and carpenters and anyone you could think of, political politicians even. And we brought them all together for a summit at the base of this glacier in this renovated fish factory. And we said, let's dream up the future together. Just inviting people to come with questions, not answers. And then we had this whole network of experiences just happening around this shared value of how might we create fires for people to come together and listen and share and ask questions, meaningful questions. And I realized that you can create a space, a fire, to bring people together, and if they're truly impacted by that experience, they'll light fires elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. Renee, who's this wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous man down here, he started a public art project in Reykjavik that was called Rockall. And Rockall is a small rock in the middle of England and Iceland, and created a space the same size as a rock and invited people to reimagine a new society and create food systems, new food systems, and create new ways of living and governance. We had a small burger stand at the festival, and Vivek and Ilmer, who are at the bottom there, then went on to Reykjavik to open up an organic burger shop. They said, we loved it. It was so fun. This is our purpose coming alive. We had no idea. This is what we wanted to do. And they went and got their own space in Reykjavik, and they're opening up pretty soon a new shop. And the most beautiful part was Hrefna on the top left of this panel. She was an artist in that first year's residency that I talked about, and she said, I love that experience so much, I want to lead the second year. And we said, yes. Let's create space and hold space for you to do that. How can we support you in that journey? And this year, just a couple weeks ago, I just got back from Iceland, and she pulled together a team and led the next iteration of the artist residency, and is just taking it forward. It's really beautiful. And I realized through these conversations of continuing to learn from the team and the people in Iceland that, Scott, like, that was great, you were the spark, but we don't need you anymore. Like, we're ready to take this forward. And I said, like, that's really hard to hear. I think sometimes, like, if you're a founder, you can relate, but also we need to let go of things, especially when it's not rightfully ours, right? Like, even thinking about, coming from Hawaii, I think I've often thought about this colonization that happens around the world, and I didn't want to be a part of that narrative. So I said, yes. Like, how can we support this transition so that you can take this forward? And that's what they're doing. They're running this entire organization, which, you know, in an office in Reykjavik, team of 11, all Icelanders, people in Iceland that are running it. It's beautiful. So then I had to ask myself, what do I want? You know, that's what they wanted. What do I want? And I wanted love. I wanted romance. I wanted intimacy. I'd spent, like, all my life working on my professional life that I hadn't really focused on the other parts of my life, like, you know, like finding love. And it was a little hard as a queer man in Iceland to find love. I mean, there was many beautiful Viking men there, but actually not many. There was just a few. And once I had, you know, my experiences with them, I said, you know, this is great, but, you know, the closest prospect lives 4 hours from me, and I need to catch a ferry to get to him, and this is just not sustainable for me. So where in the world can I go to find romance? You know, what's a good place in the world that I could go to? And of course it was the Bay Area, right? This is like a candy land for me. This is amazing, you know? Like, oh my God, is this place real? And I think I put this up here not so I could talk about my romantic adventures, but I think that as community builders, we really need to, you know, not just ask questions to others, but ask questions to ourselves, you know? Really make sure we're taking care of ourselves. Because when we take care of ourselves, we're able to provide that love to others. And then I found this amazing organization, Open IDEO, which is a part of IDEO, a design firm that created the human-centered design process that I was telling you about earlier in the presentation, which again, the core of it is just how do we understand people's dreams and needs? That's it. It's a simple question. How do we understand people's dreams and needs? And if you can figure that out, it's going to unlock a lot of answers for you. And we work with communities all around the world on really big, messy challenges. How do we reimagine this criminal justice system? How do we support refugees? How do we transition into clean energy? And my role at Open IDEO is to support and serve our community organizers in 25 cities around the world that work in unison around these challenges. So they work at the same time, they launch events, and they dream up ideas and solutions together. And one of the recent questions we explored, and again, we always start with a question, is how might we reimagine the end-of-life experience for ourselves and our loved ones? Like a really deep and heavy topic, but how do we also embed optimism into this conversation? And how do we think about what's going to happen to all of us? Like everyone in this room will experience it. How do we think about this in a deeper way? And serendipitously, I met this woman, Yoko, who is a soul sister to me now. She was at the Saga Artist Residency that I just returned from recently, and she was also a top idea in this end-of-life challenge. And she's an electronic ambient musician. And she basically talks about how when she was a patient, she was hooked up to all these monitors and hearing all these sounds. And she reminded us of this quote from Nightingale in the 19th century that says, "Unnecessary noise is the cruelest absence of care." So how do we bring a beautiful sound environment that alleviates suffering in hospitals? And she asks people a question. They say that sound is the last sense to go before you die. So what is the last sound that you wish to hear before you die? People said laughter, my loved ones, applause. And then she would bring all of these natural sounds together into a beautiful soundscape and play them for patients and play them for their families. And she's testing this out in Sibley Hospital in DC right now. And she also realized to that point of caretakers and how might we take care of ourselves, she also created a tranquility room for nurses because the only spaces that they had, she learned through research, was the bathroom sometimes. So I think the question that I want to leave you with is just how are you bringing in empathy into your work? How are you asking those questions? How are you creating fires for people to gather? How are you learning and creating space for yourself to learn, not just do? I think we live in a very do-centric society, which is great. We should actually act on the things we want to do, but we should also learn and ask questions and figure out how we can do it better. And the question I want to leave you with is, how are you building fires? So today in CMX, it doesn't have to be an actual fire. You shouldn't, spark fires in this building. Maybe we can do one in North Beach or Ocean Beach. But how are you building fires for others in your work, in your life, today, tomorrow, in the future? So, thank you.